Bir saatlik videoya Shadowing ve simultane çeviri pratiği. Lan,
Well, hello, Helen. Very nice to
hello
see you.
Helen, very nice to
You
see
sound
you.
well.
How's it going?
These are mad, mad,
It's a
mad,
mad, mad,
mad,
mad,
mad
mad,
days.
mad days.
So many emotions. Not
Uh,
all bad, happily, but
uh,
I'm just so aware that
I ju-
among the people listening to
Among
this,
the
some
people
are in
that
really
seem
tough times
to
right
really tough
now.
times,
I hope
I
this is going to
hope
be a beautiful
this is
hour
gonna
of
be a
therapy and
beautiful
help
hour
in its own way.
therapy in its own way,
Because
because
we have with us just
we
an
have
extraordinary author, an
just an
extraordinary
extraordinary
mind.
author and
Elizabeth
extraordinary
Gilbert,
mind,
obviously known for her
obviously known for
astonishing
her
best-selling success with Eat, Pray,
uh,
Love.
the
Although
best-selling
her
book.
favorite book from
Her
my point of view
favorite book,
is called Big
from my
Magic.
point of
But
view,
the
is
subtitle is
called
Creative Living
Big Magic,
Beyond Fear. Creative Living Beyond Fear. Now, when you think about
Creativity
it, that
Beyond
is a
Fear.
pretty good agenda
It's a pretty
for
good agenda for
today's conversation, I think.
today's conversation, I think.
Liz describes the
It's-
emotional
she
landscape in our
describes
lives.
emotional
I think, like
landscape
no one
in our
else
lives.
I've read, and I'm not even her target
I'm
audience.
not even target audience.
She's really extraordinary.
She's really
In Big Magic. She gave
extraordinary.
an amazing TED talk
She's
11 years ago now.
11 years ago now.
Pursuit of Your Creative Genius. It really reframed how to think of creativity. It's been seen like 19 million times or something. And it's really changed how a lot of people, they're just open to the creative genius coming in from the outside. It's a delight to
So
welcome to the
I would like to
main
welcome
stage Elizabeth
to
Gilbert.
next stage.
Hey, Chris.
Great.
Hi, Chris.
To see you.
It's good
How
to
are
see
you?
you.
Where are you?
How are you? Where are you?
Who you
Are
living
you
with
who
or
you're
staying with?
living
What's
with
up?
or staying with?
I'm fine.
I'm
I'm in Florida,
fine.
but I'm in New Jersey,
I'm in New Jersey.
where anybody would want to be.
Anybody
I'm
would wanna
by
be.
myself. I've got a
I'm
little
by
house out
myself.
in the country, and
I think I'm on
17
day 17
no
of
human contact,
no human
virtually,
contact other than
and I'm
virtually,
well. I'm
and
not
I'm
anybody
well.
who you need to be worrying about.
I'm not
So
anybody you
Wow. Well, so you're in a way you're
need to
having
worry about.
a related experience to what so many people are having. I mean, these are days of isolation for many people,
Isolation for
and that
many
brings with it
people, and that brings
lots
with it
of
lots of
difficult emotions in a way. And
difficult
we're gonna go
emotions in
through
life, but we can
many
go
of them, I
through
hope, in the next hour.
any
So
of them.
I'm hoping to talk with you about this.
Hoping
On a
to
list here
talk with you
about
this
anxiety,
year about
about
anxiety,
lightness, curiosity,
curiosity,
creativity,
creativity,
procrastination,
procrastination,
connection, and hope.
connection, and hope.
How about that? That's our
How
agenda.
about
Are you
that?
up for
Let's have
that?
an agenda.
simple buffet. Just a little light
Just a
tasting
little
menu of
light
all the
tasting
massive
manual,
human
all the
emotions.
massive human emotion.
No, I think it's probably
Absolutely.
good to
It's probably
dive
good
straight in
to
with
that's
the
the
anxiety that I know a lot of people
anxiety.
are
I
feeling
know
right
that
now. So many reasons to be anxious
so many reasons
for
to be anxious.
yourself, your loved ones, and just
Your
for this
loved
time, for
ones,
the
just for
world, and
this
how
one to the
you'll
world.
get through this.
Get through
Have
this.
you been feeling
You've been
anxiety
feeling
recently?
anxiety.
How do you think of it?
How do you
What can you
think
see?
about? Ah,
I have been, and I think you would have to
I
be
think you
either
have
a
to be either
sociopath
a
or totally
sociopath
enlightened not to
or
be
to
feeling anxiety.
not to be feeling
So I would say that
anxiety.
the first thing I would want
The
to
first thing I
encourage
would want
people
to
to do
encourage
is
of
to
people
give
to
themselves a
do,
measure of
give them
mercy and compassion for
ah,
the difficult
niye
emotions
yapamıyorum
that they're
ya?
feeling. They're extremely understandable. I think sometimes our emotions about our emotions become a bigger problem. So if you're
If you're feeling anxious and you're layering shame top of that because you should be handled better, or you should be dealing your isolation better, you should be creating, serving the world in our ah. I think that the antidote to that, uh, really warm, loving dose of compassion to yourself, because this, if your anxiety, and that deserves to show mercy. The second thing I would say about anxiety is that here's what I think is the central paradox of the emotional landscape that I'm finding particularly fascinating. There are these two aspects of don't match. It's paradox, but really different. Sesini açacağım biraz. Because we have the ability slash curse to imagine future, and also once you lived and you have the experience to recognize this terrifying piece of information, which is literally anything can happen at literally any moment to literally any person, and because we have this vast which colorful imaginations, we can see all sorts of terrifying movies in our head that all of the possibilities and hold scares to occur. As one of the scariest things are occurring. People imagined and fiction imagined in science and actually happening right now. So that's quite terrifying. The paradox is that in that level we're very bad emotionally, at fear and anxiety, because we stir very heated degree because of our imaginations about how horrible it can get. The paradox is that we are also the most capable, resourceful, and resilient species that ever lived on Earth. The history shown when change comes to humanity, either like a global level or personal level, we're really good at it. We're really good at adaptation, and I think that if we can remember that, it can help to actually mitigate fear, and you can remember it historical perspective by looking at what humanity has gone through and what we how we survived and how we can go through. You can make an inventory what you yourself have survived. My panic and my anxiety imagined future is deadly on my nervous system, but I actually had discovered that when there's actual emergency in the moment, I tend to be very good at it. I think most of us are like that. You will see that repeated in history in so many examples. There's heartbreaking and devastating phone messages that people leaving for their loved ones at September 11th.
The biggest emergency ever was happening, and in that
Biggest
moment, intuition told them what to do. The important thing to do now is to make this phone
important
call.
thing to
And I think if
do
you
now
can
is to make this
trust
phone call. When the point of emergency actually arrives, you will be
when the world changes,
and world changes people to adapt to
certainly
it. So certainly helps me cool down.
I guess there's a reason why
fear
fear
is
is
there.
there.
Just evolved by accident. It's supposed to direct behavior and help us avoid danger. And it's just sometimes it gets out of control and actually gets in our way of damages us. And any specific advice, like how can someone turn that fear into something useful at this moment? Can I tell you a story that I'm using as a touchdown for myself right now and wonder and inspiration from? Some of you may have heard Amanda Eller. She's recently because lost in Hawaii for 17 days, and there is a massive hunt for her because she left her car. She gone for hike, went her phone in car, and this disasters in 17 days full of a cliff, broke her leg, walked for 40 miles in a broken knee, lost her flashlight and shoes. She's eating moths. I met her recently, and she was so lit and radiant with this kind of serenity and kind of wonder and enjoy. I said, "How do you like this?" You went through one of the most traumatizing a person can go. I discovered that I can survive anything, going back this idea of how human are adaptive are. I'm just using like a She said on her second day on the jungle, she realized that she was truly and very much in trouble. She's already spent one night, and she was completely lost, and she was full of terror. She closed her eyes and she prayed and asked or requested. She made a wish to herself, the consciousness, to the universe. She said, "Please take my far away." And when I opened my eyes, have it be gone and have it not come back. And it was gone, replaced bad tuition. I think intuition is the opposite of fear. If fear is terror that you feel about near future, intuition only happen in the moment. So she just guided by deep intuitive sense, and in every moment she asked it right or left, up or down, eat this, don't eat this, and just trust it completely, absolutely surrender to institution, and hasn't returned. The fear hasn't returned. There's a return to some sense that there's a navigation system within you that will stay present in this actual moment, tell you what to do one moment to the next, and people will suffer and imagine a future and suffer indefinitely. Spiritual meditation practice, anybody have there's done any spiritual meditation practice, this is what you're practicing for. You are practicing for this moment. If you never tried that, it might be interesting for you.
Wow, that's
Mm,
remarkable.
That's
Story, and
remarkable.
I guess what I'm hearing
I
is
guess
two things. It's
I'm
one,
hearing
this
two
like
things, just
the
like
reaching
the
out
wishing
to
out
the
to
universe there,
universe,
specifically
but
there was a decision
specifically
to
there was a
let go
decision to let
of
go
the
of
future
the
and just to
future
focus
and just to
on
focus
the
on
moment.
the moment. That's it, yeah.
Nothing will bring you more pain than
future, and I see what I'm seeing happening right now is that
there's a relatively small percentage of the population
1% of the
from this disease.
uh, there is a larger percent of going to suffer economically from it, but there is this massive uncon.
And
Right now, those people are my concern because they are really main. And there's millions of
So
millions.
you're living there by yourself, Liz,
So
and
you're by
there are many
yourself,
others
Liz, and
in
there's
that same circumstance
the
right now.
same circumstance right now.
I suspect some are feeling
I
a
expect some of
crushing
your hitting
loneliness.
crashing and loneliness.
Talk about that.
Talk
How
about
do
that,
you
to how to handle
loneliness in a situation
loneliness
like
in a
this when it's
situation
so alien to everything that we
so
as a social
alien that
species
we
are
are
usually about? We
social
crave other
species.
people. We crave touch. We
We
crave
crave
hugs.
touch,
We
we crave
want to be there with
hearts,
people.
we
How
want
can
to
we
be
avoid
hurt by
this being a
people.
period of crushing loneliness?
How can you handle this crushing period of loneliness? You can avoid it. I think that I deliberately many times go into isolation in order to face those things. I've gone long meditation retreats, which is this year I was in India. I spent 17 days alone, no contact with anybody, which was a weird practice from what is happening right now. I see people really losing it and feeling like uh, anxiety, fear, boredom, anger, blame, loneliness, depression. All of these things come up to you when you are forced to just be your own presence. I know all of those feelings because as a meditator, I was experienced all of those. It's the hardest person in the be with is yourself. So the only way that I learned as a meditator to be able to divide and endure my own company was with universal human compassion toward me. And to recognize this is a person who's suffering right now from loneliness, and this person needs kindness for herself. And it's a very high teaching, but I think that it's a very interesting moment to practice that. What I will suggest to people, and again, it takes a certain amount of curiosity of learning about the human experience. What I've seen people spending away from that isolation because so terrified that what happened with the world right now is basically all of our uh, everything that we have can do, which that can get us out of hand to be an accidental crisis, being lonely for ourselves taken away. And I see people are ashamed to constant Zoom meeting, constant parties online, constant interaction, and all of that is lovely, but from spiritual and psychological and creative standpoint, I would say if you have any curiosity about this, don't be in such a hurry to rush away from an experience that could actually transform your life. The things sometimes, this experience sometimes transform. Ah,
think of a story that
I think there's a story. One of his teacher, it was sort of a, when the Chinese invaded Tibet, all of them running into India for safety. One of the teacher was great masters, the last glimpse of Dalahana walking into China, very patiently toward it, and everybody was running away from it, and he was walking toward it. There is a level of which first responders do that, looking into the emergency, toward the emergency. All the people are trying to solve this now. There is a way that you can get emotional as well as to walk with curiosity and with an open mind to uh, without resistance and say what is it like for person to they don't ah, how, and you can open up your compassion of that. There's so many lessons and compassion that can be found here. How about a general universal you can feel toward uh, now you experienced for 2 days on your own house. Maybe it's time to change the prison system. You see how hard it is. You have compassion toward. You can open up your feelings by open up your. Ah, there is a great opportunity for growth, and you have to have just almost like a.
And that's how I'm doing it right now.
And that's how I'm doing
So
it right now.
let's follow up on that word
Let's follow
curiosity
up
that you've
in the
used a
word
few times there.
curiosity you have
I mean,
used
a
a
lot of
few
wisdom
times
that I've
there.
heard sort of thrown
I
around
heard
online, like, oh,
thrown out,
this is a great time
this is a
to follow
great
your
time to follow
passion
your
and,
passion,
dive deep
you
into
know, dive
whatever it is
deep
that
into
you're most been
whatever
wanting to do.
you
And
most been
in
wanting
Speak
to do.
Magic, you made an
Magic,
argument
you made an
that following your
argument that
passion
following
isn't
your
necessarily the
passion
wisest strategy. You argued
isn't the
that,
wiser
follow
strategy.
curiosity.
Follow
Does
curiosity.
that apply now?
Is
Make that
that
point.
apply
Yeah,
in
I've
that
been on a
case?
personal crusade
We've
to
been in a
the
personal
world
crusade
passion
to
because I
world
feel like
passion
as
because
an
I feel like
instruction
as
for
an
people how
instruction
they
for
should be
people
living
how
because
they should be
I know that
living,
in my
because
case
I know that
with
in my case
anxiety,
it brings
this
nothing
is
but
one
anxiety. This is another one
that has become a
that has
cudgel
become
that
a
we use to
cudgel that we
bludgeon
use.
ourselves into thinking that
Legend
we're not doing
didn't
enough,
think we
that
are
we're
that
not doing life
doing
enough,
enough.
that you're supposed to be more
We are
useful,
supposed to be
not
more
you're
useful,
supposed to be
more
changing the
productive,
world,
changing
you're
the
supposed to
world.
be uncovering some
Supposed to
particular
be
talent that only you have,
uncover
with it you're supposed to then
particular
transform
talent,
everybody and monetize
transform
it, no
everybody
pressure.
and
I
monetize it,
start
no
to get
pressure. I
lost
start to
in
get
repeating
yavaş konuş.
the cultural that's what we've been
Cultural
taught.
this
That's what we've been taught is that purpose and passion
is
are
the purpose
everything.
and passion and everything. I would let you press.
And I think curiosity is
I
very
think
different because the
curiosity
stakes are so much
sticks
lower.
with.
The stakes of passion say you have to shave your head and move to
We
India and get rid of all your
get rid
possessions
of all your
and
possessions
start
and
a
start
startup.
up
Like what
like
it's so
it's
intense.
so intense.
Curiosity
But
is a very
curiosity
simple
is a very
universal
simple universal
experience that
experience that
causes you to want to
causes
look
you
at
to
something
want to
just a
look at
tiny bit
something as
closer.
a tiny bit closer,
You don't have to
and you don't
danger your
have
way
to
around it.
danger
You just
life
look.
around it. You
And
just look. And it might be taking weekends to try something new for a little while. It's a mildest, it's almost easily missed, and I think so many times we're looking way up to the sky at our passion or purpose supposed to be. Meanwhile, there is this
Breadcrumbs of curiosity that
curiosity if you can slow down. And again, this is about not rushing out of the experience and being silent still alone. You can slow down, you might be see them. But I could say one thing I'm noticing isn't obstacle right now, because a lot of people talk, oh, isolation great, this has been perfect time for me to learn Italian. You find that they are actually in a paralysis of anxiety and creating anything or doing anything. First of all, again, like a blank, it's a hard times. It might take you a minute, a nervous system, and your mind to adjust the reality. But the second thing I would say is that people are saying that they troubled with their creativity because there's an isolation. I might daringly suggest that perhaps you are not in enough isolation. By that I mean, are you oh, into your home? Though if you are watching the news all day, what you're doing is you're bringing the disaster to your workspace, you're bringing into your soul, you're bringing into your mind, create tremendous uh, amount of opposite of creative environment. You need to isolate a little bit from those. It's not me distracting. I get up
I read the New York Times.
morning.
I give myself 40 minutes with it, and that's it for the day because I know
I
that
give
if
myself
I'm
40
not
minutes
going to
for
attract
news and
others
that's
to
it.
and then I won't be
And
able
I
to
won't be able
hold
to
intuition. I won't be able to
hold
help because I
intuition,
myself will be suffering, and I won't be able
and
to
I
be
won't be
present
able
for
to
this
be
very
present for this very interesting moment in my life, and it is dream I want to
So there's a piece
remain.
of being a good steward of your senses and deciding what
And
you
deciding
put
what you
your
are
senses in
gonna
front of.
put your senses in front of.
Helen.
Helen.
There's an outpouring
This is
on
an
Facebook,
outpouring on
gratitude for
Facebook.
you.
Gratitude
People
for
are
you.
so
People
grateful
are
and
so grateful
grateful for the
and
calm
grateful
that you
for
are
the calm
instilling
that you
in
are
us all. So
instilling
thank
in
you
all.
from them
Thank
and
you
from
from
me.
them and
I've
from
also
me,
had a number of
but also had
questions
a
about
number of
grief.
questions about
We're
grief.
kind of
What
dealing with
kind of
grief at a
dealing
different
with
scale
grief
at
in
the
a
moment.
different
One
scale?
person has
At
already
one
lost
person has
5
already
people to
lost five
coronavirus.
people through
And so
coronavirus.
any
And
thoughts
so,
of
any
how to
thoughts of
manage grief
how
at
to
this
manage
scale or how to
the
kind of
scale or
process
how
this
to
in a way
process
that
this in a way that
honors
honors
both them and
both
yourself?
them and just yourself.
First of all,
First of all, my
condolences,
condolences,
and I think
any words that I
say
will
to
somebody who
somebody
who just can only be inadequate.
Grief
Grief is bigger than us. It's bigger than your efforts to manage it. And if you want to hold yourself and your family members compassionately through grief, you have to allow that it cannot be managed. And think that grief management is something that we have kind of created in our very Western idea that figure out something, we can avoid suffering from it. We can figure out how to translate grief and how to walk through grief, and then we don't have to experience magnitude of. Many of you know that I lost the love of my life 2 years ago from cancer, and when she died, uh, what it feels like to lose a person most important to you, which is of course the biggest fear we all have. I know that you can survive it, but I know that you survive it by loving yourself to feeling and go back to directly through China and with conflicting it. Do you have the courage to let it break over you? And I wish I could remember her name. There's an extraordinary woman, and she's a chaplain for this apartment in Maine, and she's in charge of knocking people's door and giving them a. When she goes with the police or something happens, she told a story once that very moving and very helpful for my grief. What she witnessed through years of sitting through the nightmare of loss is that when she knocks on that door, it tells that person, your daughter, your family member, your husband has been killed. There is this universal collapse where the person will just be. It is the title we have comes and takes you down, and you lose the, all your attainments, all your wisdom. Nothing can stand up to that. You literally go through the floor, and you suffer and grieve, and she holds them through that. She learned the most astonishing things that never last more than half an hour. The worst wave. It can't. You actually physiologically can sustain that, and if you allow it, then within half an hour, usually sooner, this has happened every single time she's been with. The very next thing that happens that that person comes down, they catch a breath, and next question they ask is very reasonable question. Where is the body? What do we do next? What can we have to do? Who was in the car? And that with that question, she said, they start to rebuild their new life. Even an hour ago was seemed unsurvivable, and she sees that as an example of once again tremendous psychological resilience of human being. And that doesn't mean that they never grieve again. It doesn't mean that grief is over. Somewhere in their mind, it's landed, and now already they are making a plan about, okay, who do we need to notify, what's the next thing we need to do. And again, if you remember this as you go through your panic, you can remember that in the moment of emergency there will be an intuitive deep, sensitive, tell you that there's going to be a next step, and it's time to take those next steps. And also remember that resilience is a shared genetic and psychological inheritance. We are each and every one of us. How anxious you feel you are, no matter how every single one of us is the genetics survivor, the hundreds of years of survivors. We are all, each one of us, a line of people who made the next correct intuitive move, survived incredibly, incredibly. Almost da biologically, you can relax when the moment comes. Will you be faced with the biggest challenge? Shared human consciousness. Now it's time to make next move.
So beautiful. So many
So
more
beautiful,
questions.
so many
We'll
more
come back.
questions. I will be back.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Helen.
thank you, Liz. I think the
Thanks,
author's
Helen.
name was Kate
I think her
Braestrup.
name was Kate.
So
and
that's the book. If you need a book right now,
if
Dear If
you-
You Need Me by Kate Braestrup.
Yeah.
Liz, you and I got to have a conversation a few months after
You
Ray
made-
passed away. It was actually the first.
It was
ever
actually
episode of
the
the
first
Pregnancy
excerpt
podcast we
of
did, and,
podcast with it.
I found that
I found
it's
that
probably my favorite
it's pretty my
episode ever of the
favorite.
TED interview. Like it was so
It
moving
was
how you spoke about
how
your
you
grief.
spoke about your grief, and
I
then
feel like that's
I feel like that's potential
I know
resource
we were both
for people,
sitting there shedding tears, and
shutting
I-
ears, and
I found that an
I
extraordinary
find that
experience,
extraordinary
for sure.
experience personally, but somehow
in this moment,
in this moment,
you know, if you follow this,
if you follow this journey of curiosity, if you walk towards the harder moments, do you think this actually can be a creative time for people of if they're willing to do that? Absolutely, and I think it can be, and I don't think creativity in this case has necessarily mean that you start this. It doesn't need to be. You're going to be creating new worlds and new lives inside of this. If we're gonna be doing that individually, we are going to be doing that collectively. I think of the shoots of small trees that only come out.
Where seed pods have
Well-
to explode under great heat. We're in a kind of crucible moment right now.
And I wouldn't begin to have the most predict what sort of creativity will come, but if look, history is we probably see is people at their best and people at their worst. But I think we see more of people at their best because that's typically how it works. Your model of how creativity happens is that it doesn't come from you have to sit there saying, okay, this is my moment to be creative, be creative. It evolves fundamentally an openness to something coming to you, to be open to be curious, listening, and open to be that moment. Perhaps they could apply it more than ever just because we have this almost term of the external, this huge distraction of the news. Some of the distractions are taken away. They actually can receive more at this. If you stop thinking about your self-isolation and your self-distancing and quarantine, you can start thinking as a retreat, you will find it, you can't really tell the difference between quarantine and retreat. You know, a lot of you had.
I talked about going to India to an ashram for 2 months, and God, I can't tell you how many years people have heard say, "I wish I could do that." I'm like, well, you got it.
You got it.
And by the way,
This is what it felt like.
This is what it felt like
To learn,
I
I think,
needs to move a bit.
to learn how to be present with yourself
means sticking with a lot of error,
sitting in a lot of
and
being able to allow that without having to resist it, reach our side.
I also want to tell a story that a friend of mine,
My friend told me a story about when she goes to South Africa and teaches animal tracking courses. She works all these African animal trackers, this old man who have been hunting skills passed down for generations, and she was using it as an example, the difference between focus and openness. I think sometimes biggest mistake people do is focus, and focus is an anxiety producing energy as well.
Drill down and you can feel your whole
You-
body tense. But what she described
But what she described is animal trackers are outliers. All these old men, the very first thing they do, sit down against a tree, and they appear to go to sleep, and they drop into a state that she calls wordless loneliness, and wordless oneness you can call meditation zone, but in stillness you can actually drop your nervous system into such a quiet place that you have 360 awareness. And I sit like apparently do nothing. They're extremely long time looking at how little of eyes to the world, and maybe an hour, 2 hours in on several state lines over there. So for me, I've learned all my creative wishes like the same way, and I don't have a idea for book in the past that make me really anxious. Then I know go for walks, sleep, do a lot of driving, drawings.
Oh, wait. Bring that back.
I have
Bring
something
that up.
here
Owls,
for
eh?
my new project to distract myself.
Aren't they dear?
They are beautiful. Goodness me.
Well,
They are
I'm just
beautiful.
like playing with color
I'm
and
just
texture
playing
because
with color and
it
texture
helps
because it calms me, and I think you can think of what to do right now. Just doing what you used to do makes you feel relaxed. I was an anxious child and learned, and we can with our curiosity, and usually run our lesson. The world taught us they were fasting, medium waste, stacks or substances, which the extremism, workaholism, or whatever we did, we had to sit with ourselves and really gonna opportunity. You're actually on the right track. Whatever it was, it's like Legos. Get some Legos, get some coloring books, get some your hand and mod. Do whatever grants you. That's gonna cause you nothing but anxiety. Not going to make you be out of service. There's such a thing to I can touch a minute for empathetic meltdown. We're taught that empathy is a good thing. I would suggest that in the case of this dramatic, what you want to talk about is compassion, and differences. Extremely important. Compassion is I am actually not suffering right now. You are. I see you as suffering, and I want to help you. But that's what compassion is. Empathy is you're suffering, and now I'm suffering because you're suffering. Now we have two people suffering, and nobody who can serve, and nobody who can we have. And if you have your empathetic suffering makes you another patient who needs the assistance, you'll be more willing to deep into compassion. What underlies compassion is the virtue of courage. The courage to be able to stick with and witness and somebody else's pain without inhabiting yourself so much that you will become the person and who's suffering. And it takes courage to watch that without diving into it and enjoying it and becoming sick yourself. Empathy is just a feeling, just compassion, your use of compassion applied that is turning that feeling into something that actually practical to do something if you can for that person.
It's recognizing that if I feel your pain, I can't help
It's
you
recognition. I
because now my
can
pain has stayed.
hear your pain,
And I think that
sometimes
all you
I
need to do is know
that
that,
all
and it makes you turn
it
the
takes
shift.
to
One of
say
my
no to
teachers
that
said
and makes a
this
shift.
my favorite thing about
My favorite thing about my suffering is that it ignores.
My favorite thing about my suffering is that it isn't yours. My favorite thing about your suffering is that it isn't mine. So
And my favorite thing about your suffering is that it isn't mine.
move through this earth without it. when it's your turn,
When
you'll
it's
know.
your turn,
When it's not your
when it's
turn,
not your turn,
stay out of that field
get
of
out
somebody
of that
else's pain,
feel of
because
somebody
you can't
else's
help
pain,
them
because you
when
can't
you're hurting
help them when you're
yourself.
paying
So
yourself,
find it
and
in
you see
self-courage.
yourself
I think
the
some of this
result
is
of courage,
based
and
on
based on
Buddha's
accepting
first noble truth, which is that
noble
suffering
truth,
is an
suffering
inevitable aspect
is
of
inevitable
life. We've all been
accept
in it at some
aspect
point.
of
We've
life.
been in it at some point. And now how can I
And
help?
now how can I help?
I'm not saying this is
I'm not
easy.
saying that this is easy. I'm just saying is also if you're suffering from an empathetic meltdown,
your stress is up,
your stress is that your endorphin is down, you're going into a parasympathetic collapse. This will be another
because you will have a breakdown and you won't be able to help the people around you.
because you will have a breakdown, you won't be able to help the people around you.
Have you seen any signs that
Have you
if
seen
someone takes that
if someone
empathy
takes that empathy
and compassion, let's say,
and
decides to act in some way, maybe
maybe
big
big
or
or
small,
small,
that
that
actually
actually
they feel that
dipped
there's a
away,
healthiness to
that's
that,
the healthiness
or
to
is that
that,
the
or
language
is that the
of
language of
imposing
just
more guilt on
introducing
people?
the guilt on people? I think there is a beautiful health, happiness come from being in service, and that's also have been medicating more my anxiety when I.
Whatever resources I've got. Here's what you have to keep in mind, though.
This is what you keep into mind. Right now, in my own personal experience, there is more need than I have more resources to need. I have to begin with that reality, and I have to have the courage to sit in that reality totally and acknowledge that that's the case. The second thing I think emotional sobriety will require right now is the recognize that this is going to be a marathon that I was going, and the first week of uh, all my way energized, let's say the world, all my creative threads, everybody is email, texting, zooming, all I had response, let's do this, let's get this way. I found myself joining with some of them, and just again based on my intuition, but I also found myself questioning them. Guys, this is a marathon. We're a mile one. What's going to be a very long marathon? So pace yourselves and pace your resources. Don't overgive to the point where you collapse, because we're still gonna help. We are still gonna need more. And so find the steady pace and be willing to be feeling tired in long run. Great, Helen.
Such great advice.
That's
Liz.
great
So many
advice, Liz,
questions
and so
pouring
many
in.
questions pouring in. One of them is from a therapist who confesses that she and many of our clients are having trouble with the letting go of control in this moment, and wonders if you have any advice on how to let go of control and to be willing to feel that everything is on your way. Justice. The sense that you had control is a myth to begin with, and except I found it very control is an illusion, and there are times where we are able to feel ourselves because we're so good at technology, we are so good at creating trick ourselves and believing that we are in control of any of this, but we are not. And the paradox, when we surrender, how relaxing it is. Nobody ever wants to surrender because nobody wants control. If you recognize, if you had never control, all you ever had was anxiety, and then you let go of the myth of control, you will find that I find that if I say that in sentence and I remind myself all you had was anxiety, you are not letting go of anything, and surrendering means that letting go of something you never ever had. This awakening that's happening right now is that you're not losing control, is that for the first time you're noticing that you never had it. And the world is doing its job. The job of the world is to change instantly, and sometimes radically, and sometimes immediately, and it's doing its job. And that is also normal way of things. And again, we are adapted and we're resilient and we can have it, but I don't hit myself a minute that I'm in control of anything, because that's ever happening. My realm of control is extremely small. Usually, like, I need to get a glass of water right now. I never been.
One more question from online, if I may, and then I will jump
If I
off
may,
again.
and I may jump off again.
You
You
know,
know, Chris,
you
you and I
in a
were
pretty
all in a
privileged
pretty
position.
privileged
Ted has been
position.
able
Ted
to
has been
go
enabled
remote.
to
We're able to
go
work
remote. We are
remotely,
able
but
to work from remotely, but
many,
many
people
millions
in the
of
US
people
and
in the
beyond are
US
not
and
able
beyond are not able to
to do that.
do that, and people are really suffering. How
How can we help?
how can we
What are your
help?
thoughts
What are
about
your
people
thoughts
who are
about
unable to
people
social
are
distance,
unable to
who are
social
losing their jobs
distance
because
or
of the
losing
kind of
their
the
jobs?
global catastrophe that is unveiling? How can we think about that
How
in
can
in
you
a
talk
humane,
about that
compassionate
in
way?
humane compassionately? It's crashing, and again, it's the same case of the person who said that they lost 5 family members. I can't, sitting in this position of comfort and safety, say anything that I think is going to be accurate and appropriate, other than to say that I just think of this Indian power, but I keep going back to I store my grain and my neighbor. Western capitalistic society has taught and trained us to hoard long before loneliness happened. Mm. Advertising, the whole capitalist model taught us security, taught us unity with... Biraz sesli konuş ya. Disconnect between those who have never been bigger, and you never in my life there been an invitation again to recording. This is not time for hoarding. This is time for study of grain, building for emotionally sober and accurate, to look at that in a really honest way, to not put your own family in danger, but to be able to say, what can I offer in immediacy and the longer term, a conversation about resources. Why does so many have so much, and why does so many have so little? That's again out of control, but you can then I have what's mine and make sure that I'm going into the world what we have in mind. Again, not a panic, but or I'm gonna destroy myself to save someone else, because it's not helpful, but in a reasonable way. But that's the tragic, but I think sobering reality. And again, underlying all of that is the recognition that anything I have to say about people who are in extraordinary suffering, I'll be back. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks.
Talk to me a minute
Please
about
talk to me a minute
anger.
about
like
anger.
I think a lot of
I think a lot of just from the conversation just we had, so many reasons to feel angry right now. But what's going on?
And part of me feels
And part of
we
you
should
feels that we
that
should
this
be,
is that's
and
what
that's the
anger is
part
for.
was
It's to
anger's
highlight
is for.
things that are
I like
unjust
that
and unfair
people
and that we must
things
pay
are
attention
unjust
to.
and
It
perish
might be
into
us
the
be scared of
autonomous,
it. I
and
think
I scared of it.
be an eruption of anger that's dangerous
The
both
anger is
personally
dangerous,
for
and for
society. Have you
the
felt
decisive,
anger? What are
have
you
you
doing with it?
felt anger, and what you are doing with it?
Press conference, and I think all thinking people do.
I think all thinking people do feel anger. I feel angry when this wasn't taken more seriously, when I don't take it more seriously. As much as I feel content and kaçın. To recognize how serious is this, I also have to be candid to 2 weeks. Why is everybody overreacting to this so much? I think we are have to own our piece of, and I think rolling waves of awakening that are happening in people, and sort of anger feel right now are why people are not taken seriously, who are in quarantine themselves, not putting people in danger, but that wasn't it was in Hong Kong airport, sailing through the Hong Kong airport, going around mass. What's the big deal? What's everybody? It takes people as long as it takes them to uh, anger has its place, and I think wages anger, which is kind of an anger that says a violation has occurred here, a humanitarian violation is occurring here, to be very stirring for transformation. Again, it's how comfortable can you be sitting with this comforting emotion and what you can do with them. Are you gonna go? Huh? Is that useful? Is that productive? And so I think there's, again, I keep using the word emotional sobriety. Emotional sobriety that often required to feel that anger, acknowledge it, to show yourself mercy for how comfortable it is, and to steadily recognizing again this is a marathon. You reasonably can do to change the situation.
I mean, the part of me that's
The part of me
constantly looking
that
for the
constantly
best
looking for
narrative
the personal relative
that
helps
the
that
anger we feel now can
the
almost
anger if
displace some of. I mean,
displays some
the
of
world's been an angry place for the
what's
last
been an
couple of
anger
years. There's been so
place.
much anger
There's been
inflamed
so
online. We've
much
made each other angry,
we
often
made each other angry.
unnecessarily, outrage sparking out,
Our age
disgust,
sparking out
etc.
with disgust,
I mean,
etc.
is there any hope
Is
that
is there any hope that
this is a sort of
this
massive
massive societal shaking up? It's like don't be so silly, look at what actually matters here. We can at least focus on more attention to
some things that we really
things
should be angry about.
we should
But
be angry
other
about,
things
but
that
other things that maybe
can lead people to say
people can say human connection will really matters in this moment.
people from all sides, we need each
People
other.
say we need each other, we just have to use this as a moment when become together.
How
How
how do you think about that?
how
Like,
do you
how do we
think about
turn
that?
some
How
of
do we
these
turn
emotions
these
into
negative emotions into
a force for good that at
a
least
force
gives us some permission
with some
to hope
permission
that
to
something
hope that
special
something
comes out of
special
all this?
comes out of
Well,
it?
I think you have to give yourself permission to hope, and I don't think
I
it's
think you should give yourself the
to give yourself
permission to hope, because again, in the way that history has shown, has a catastrophe. One thing that I'm noticing, I'm a little bit amused that people still predicting what the post-pandemic world is gonna be. I noticed that their prediction seems to be suspiciously exact alignment of personal view of field world. My friends that are Ethiopian, that are already living in the utopia world, they are. This is the official beginning of the police state.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of hubris in trying to imagine
They're
that new world.
trying to imagine what this world can be. A friend of mine always says when people aren't busy, I think that gives me hope. And it's true the other way too.
But yeah,
I think I'm terrible at social engineering, and you know this, and you have better minds in common, and talk about this on a global scale. The only word that I have a really intimate, familiar engagement with is this one. And in the individual level is what I understand this. The only world we live in is this one. Minding this and learning how calm this, how openness, get on the other side of the emotions that are causing harm to you is my world.
Well, you're an extraordinary storyteller, and you already told us one.
You're extraordinary storyteller.
Amazing story earlier on.
Story.
Have you come across any other recent stories that have given you reason for hope, perhaps?
Well, I'll give you one.
Aa, hiçbir şey anlamadım.
This one I delight in.
This one I delight in years ago, 20 years ago. I was in France.
I was friends with a woman named Winifred who was in her 90s.
Who was in their 90s. She was really
who had lived in for her entire life,
have had very storied and checkered wildlife surrounding lots of gain. She was this extraordinarily
I was friends with her. I was 25. She was 95. But I would call her
I would call her my very good friend. She's so open to everything, and every night. What have you learned about more than anything else? Because such a Yavaş konuş ya. What's your favorite book that you ever had? And she said, I can't state my favorite book because there's been so many, but
which I started learning when I was 80, and it changed my life. And it did. She'd gone on these expeditions to Jordan and Iraq, and she was just so full.
She was just so full of living, and I said to her, what have you learned? All of your experiences. What is the most? She said, human beings can adapt to anything. Human beings can adapt to absolutely anything. If Martians landed on Earth tomorrow, we will already be used to it. There's a level of which I'm seeing this adaptation happen, and that is both a good and bad thing. We can totalitarianism. The love of my life in it, we can adapt. I keep using that as a touchstone for myself because I don't know, nor I presume to know, because what world is going to be after this. I also just have to point out that all you had a lot of complaint about, we have for. I have
raising your hand in any of the seminars I've taught over the last years and saying we live in a golden age.
We live in a golden age. I'm so grateful and appreciative of what I have. Now you want that word back, right? Actually remember that as we go forward, that this moment for some of us right now might be one that back later. Well, that was actually pretty good. So personally, I'm just hoping that in intimate level, in not socioeconomic, global political level, but it's an invitation to actually be grateful for safety we have and the people that you have, and maybe carrying them for a little bit. Really, once the crisis is over, we're going to forget our gratitude, but you might need to make a word note.
Thank you, Liz. I think we have a last question.
I think we have a last question from Helen.
Yeah, what crisis, right?
What crisis, right?
So Liz, just
To Liz,
a request for
the quest for concrete strategy to try and reduce the fear of the shame that is coming at this moment. I'll give you mine, and it may feel weird, out of reach. I'm beyond that at this point, and it has been game changer and life changer for me. I have a 20-year-long practice waiting myself every day a letter from love. This may not feel concrete and you feel very but it does, is that it helps me through my anxiety, and I needed every single of it because I'm anxious every single day. I wake up shamed every day. I wake up every day. All of those different emotions of, and they cause me pain, and they cause me fear, they cause me distress, this make me sick. 20 years ago I was going through back depression, and began this tactic is that I sit with notebook and write for myself from myself. What I mean by love is infinite, merciful, Lords of all human compassion, and every single one of these, I I start with I need you, and love saying I'm right here, and I say I'm going through I'm really angry, I'm anxious, and then I just allow to come through my hand whatever you can imagine. Ah, what would you say to yourself if you were in with your room? So for me, that is usually a combination of this. I've got you. I'm right here. I see how distressed you are. It's all right, and I need you feel better. I think out of our anxieties is that we want to get out of it as fast as we can. It makes no difference to me if you're afraid or anxious. I'm with you, and I'm gonna be with you through all this entire thing, no matter what it takes. I'm going nowhere. I'll be with you until you're dead. There is nothing you can do to lose me. You can't fail. You can't do this wrong. You are infinitely loved. And it's so interesting to me that the opposite of is in my life, in my emotional landscape, is opposite of fear is love. And that presence of sense that I got you, which is the thing that we all want someone to say, and it's going to be all right. What happens to me physiologically is that my mind just hearing those words and seeing those words, and from there, and I'm going to take nice intuitive right action best as I can.
You can say no to this, and it may be a totally inappropriate thing to ask, but you don't happen to
You
have
don't happen to have
in the last day or two that you consider reading, all or in part of? I don't know how long they are.
Let me see what we've got. Let's see. A new channel here. Okay, so here's one. So
Here is one.
panicking
I was panicking because I want to offer my apartment in New York to the woman who's a COVID-19 nurse who volunteered to come in New Jersey to help. And I'm afraid that it will affect my neighbors if I let her stay there. Thinking ethically, is it appreciated for me to do this? So I wrote this. I'm right here. And I said I want to offer that COVID-19 nurse my apartment, but I'm afraid that many of us will affect it, and I don't know what is right move is. And I said I actually know what the answer to that is, but I'm with you. And I said, what do you think I should do? Why don't you just sit here with me here and be with me? That you cannot make the wrong choice, that it doesn't matter against thing. You might be loved. I got you. I can see how much you're spinning. I catch. And it doesn't. This. It doesn't matter if you make this decision this minute, next day, or never. I will be just as much with you at the end of this decision. And as I said, what do you think I should do? And Love says, I need you to go get a glass of water. What I found myself is love gives the bad advice. Love never gives advice beyond once you get a glass of water, once you rest, you're doing best. This is a hard time. I got you. I've got 20 years of those journals. I'm assuming that I'm gonna need it for my rest of my life. Wow, that was.
I don't know, Helen. I think we might be done.
I think it might.
I'm done.
I think I'm done. I can't get any more after that. How beautiful! Good grief.
Liz Gilbert,
You're really phenomenal. You just got this. You need to. We're articulating.
And you've brought all of us to a very tender, intimate place, and thank you for that.
Thank you for.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris.
Helen.
Thank you, Helen. Take care of yourselves, everybody, and
We're right here with each other.
we're right here through
Thank you, Liz. Goodbye.
with each other through this. Thank you.
Oof.
Oof.
Deep breath.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
that was special. That was
how
really
special that was
I hope-
special to me. I
I know
hope
that you're all in different
the thing you're in
circumstances
different
online, but there's so
circumstances
many-
online,
so
but
many
there is
elements
so
to
many
this
elements to
thing,
this
the-
that
you know, there's
bring
some problems that
there's a
those of
permanent
us
state
who
that
are isolated
who
have
arise
in
like
many
it
ways
have
really
many
serious problems, and we're really aware of that.
of us have a
Um,
luxuries problem and we are not
That's
aware
not
of
wrong.
that, but
And,
that's the
we're
problem,
going to give space
and
on
we're
the
gonna
podcast
get
to many of the
and
voices as
many
well.
of
We're
us
hoping to hear next week from
hoping to next week
Doctor at the Front
to
Line,
Dr.
a voice
Frontline
from India. We
from
hope,
India
some of
will
the horrifying
help
things
some
that are
of
happening
the
there. And also
and also
some pretty amazing proposals.
some
for
amazing
how the world
proposals
could
for
get
how
out of this, like
the world come out of this
proposals and how we get
specific
past
proposals
this
and
period
how
of
do we
lockdown to bringing
pos
back
what
the
bring
economy, all of this,
all of these measures. So
I guess
I guess we won't belong and
come back, calendar this,
co-
share with friends,
ah
help us figure out
and help us figure
podcast.
out.
I also wanted to flag.
I also want to
you were
say
able
that
to tune
if
in
you are
to
able to
Susan
tune in
David's
for
conversation
Susan
earlier in the week, we have
conversation,
launched a new
we have
podcast
launched in
with
new
Susan
podcast
that launched
with
on Monday.
Susan
We're
that
calling it
launched
Checking
in
In
Monday.
with
We're
Susan
calling it
David.
Checking In with
And
Susan
she's gonna
Davids,
be
and she's
sharing
gonna be
daily
sharing
tips
daily
on how to
tips
deal
on
with
how
this
to
pandemic.
deal with
You
this
can find
pandemic,
that
so you can confine that
wherever
wherever
you
you find
podcasts
podcasts
in this day and age.
in this day and age.
To this conversation,
We will be archiving it. Will be on Facebook. Also put it onto TED.com to find the that Christine last year I confessed just weep or too long. You can find that go.com/TEDconnect. But that's it from us. And tomorrow I wanna we have a very special treat, which is less chat, more beauty. We will be joined by the unbelievably talented person, boxer, singer and musician, and sage, and she's gonna give us a glimpse of her work. See you tomorrow.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks so much,
We're in this
everyone.
together.
We are in this together.
Stay safe. See you soon.
Stay safe. See you soon. See you soon. Be well. Aa, neydi o ya? Boğazım ağrıdı yemin ediyorum. Of. Çeviri de sonra yapacağım.